The key thing that I see a lot of companies do not correctly is they have like 20 KPIs. That is quite confusing. I like to stick to 5, 7 max. Building relationships, the same thing that you do in your personal life, you do at work, right? It's understanding it's not all about you, right? You need to understand what the other goals, motivations, objectives of other teams are and bake that into whatever you're doing, right? And take them into consideration. Lots of communication, right? I have weekly, monthly calls with all the various departments that I liaison with. I have very frank, open conversations with them. I don't sugarcoat anything. I'm sure a lot of people will tell you that. Like sometimes I think they wish I would sugarcoat a bit more, you know? So we have these open, frank conversations. They return the favor. So we lay it all out on the table, right? And worst case scenario, if things, you know, hit rock bottom, I just lock everybody in a conference room, bust out a bottle of tequila, and then, you know, make sure we all get it sorted before I open that door. Unfortunately, with lockdown, that's made it a lot more difficult.
Right. Okay. How have you continued to like build this relationship after working from home and doing it remotely?
And, you know, actually, it's quite interesting because you see inside people's homes, right? You have a lot more one-on-one conversations with them. You know, we've come up with some tricks on some of the meetings. You know, what are you watching at home? You know, what's new? And so I think it is a bit weirder, but as people are turning on more and more video, they're getting a little less weird about it. I don't think there's a big issue, right? I don't see any problems with building those relationships online.
That's a good way to look at it, because a lot of people, they see Zoom and a lot of meetings as a hassle or as an inconvenience. So it's a good way to be like resourceful and find out a little bit more about your team members. So that's really cool.
And make it fun. Make it fun. Yeah, you know, show me your dog, right? You know, like, oh, is that your kid? Let me see, you know.
Yeah. Kelsey, I want to see your background. What are those little plates in the back?
Okay, so I'm staying at my boyfriend's family's house right now because he had to come into Wales, right? So yeah, it's a
it's not you. It's not your personality then.
No. This is not my London
We'll move
flat.
on.
But it's great because you know when you're with the family, you'll be on these Zoom calls, right? And they bring you tea, they bring you, you know, sometimes my dinner. I mean, they've been great.
Yeah, they make an appearance.
Exactly.
Love that. Okay, so let's move on to metrics. What would you say the metrics are, the core metrics for you, as if I can get my words out today? What do you think the core metrics are for your function?
Yeah, this is probably no, you know, shock. It's probably the same for a lot of people. It's stuff like weighted, unweighted coverage, average deal cycle, average deal size, win rates, all that kind of stuff. It's, you know, you have to, what's interesting though, is I see a lot of companies take, you know, the industry standard and try to make those the KPIs and the targets, right? You really have to look at your historical data to see what it's telling you. Some companies need 3x unweighted coverage, some need 6x unweighted coverage. What does the historical data tell you, right? I think, you know, the key thing that I see a lot of companies do not correctly is they have like 20 key KPIs, right? That is quite confusing, right? So I like to stick to 5, 7 max, right? Then personally, what I do is I slice and dice it, right? So I look at it by region, I look at by rep, I look at by, you know, product type. So those are all, you know, then I use that as commentary on those key KPIs. And it's important those 5 and 7 do not change. You just lock them in, right? You don't want a moving target. That becomes also quite confusing. But, you know, also I've gotten a little bit even more granular over the last, you know, 10 years is looking at engagement levels, right? Is it going up? Is it going down? Do we have the right contacts? Do we have the right titles that we're talking to? So a deal by deal basis, right? So when you're looking at, say, if a sales rep has very low win rates, right? You go even further and deeper, but you don't expose that to the executives. Those are those are commentaries that you place, when you're talking about those 5 KPIs. We're having an issue here, and this is why, but you don't show them the whole kitchen sink, right? I also look a lot about, we have a long sales cycle at Matrix. It's over a year. It's year and a half, large deals, right? So there's key steps that have to be done in each of the deals, right? It doesn't change. So I look at those and see, do we have enough runway to close those key steps by the close date, right? Which is with longer sales cycles, you can get a lot more granular.
Okay, that makes sense. So looking at the historical data, splicing and dicing, and then focusing on 5 to 7 metrics, and those shouldn't change. So you're able to track it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You see a lot of, if the metrics don't look good, they change the KPI. That's a very simple, response to that, but it doesn't do the company any good, right?
That makes sense. Okay, so can you help me paint a picture on like how effective these metrics are in bridging the operations and strategic divide, so like tactical and strategy?
Yeah, I mean, so you should keep the same KPIs, right? When you're building the strategy, you should look at those KPIs, and those data points should help kind of warrant the strategy. Sometimes when you're looking at entering new markets or new territories, for example, you can also use those KPIs to see if there's an impact there, right? What if you're having a much lower win rate in a new territory? You should compare that against your standard operational KPIs, right? The KPIs should not change. You should keep those locked and loaded, and you need to develop the strategy to help drive those KPIs, increase them, right? The challenge is where your metrics and your data is, or your data is not accurate. It's not clean, right? I've seen a lot of companies make the mistake of where they are making strategic decisions and the data is wrong. So for example, I've seen where, marketing has invested in a new initiative and they see all these inbound leads that are coming in. So they double down on it. Come to find out there were some list uploads with the wrong lead source, and it was really not the data that they were thinking it was. And once the data was cleaned up, they had to make another kind of pivot move because that strategic initiative was not backed up by the data, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought up marketing ops. So like, how do you ensure there's alignment between sales ops and marketing ops?
It's a little bit like men are from Mars, women are from Venus, if you ask me. They speak completely different languages, right? And collaboration, it's such a fluffy white bunny term to me, but really it is about collaboration. I've seen where marketing, for example, if you're defining what an MQL is or an SAL, I see a lot of times they define that in a silo. They don't talk to the sales team, right? You need to talk to the sales team. And the flip side, the sales team needs to provide feedback back to the marketing team, right? So is this new content going to help drive deals to close? Is it going to, help bring them new leads? So they need to, I'm constantly working on getting feedback both ways, right? It doesn't work if they work, separately and then, think that they're going to work, God, how would I say that? In a beautiful relationship, right? They're going to probably break up, and they need to align the KPIs as well, right?
That makes sense. It's kind of like what you said before about really great communication. That's what's going to build a really great relationship.
Yes, exactly.
That makes sense. Okay, let's talk about tech. Is there any tech that you've implemented that has made a really positive impact?
Right. So bridging sales and marketing divide, there is one. It's called Komiko. I think it's now called Inbox AI. This is a pretty cool, slick technology. It adds all the sales contacts into Salesforce automatically based on Outlook activity, right? So if you email somebody, it automatically adds that contact into Salesforce. No longer do I have marketing, complaining that sales aren't adding their contacts into Salesforce, right? It also logs all of their meetings, sales should not be spending time logging events into Salesforce, if you ask me. They shouldn't be spending time adding contacts into Salesforce. I'd much rather have them out selling, right? It also does where it auto stamps like the last meeting, the next meeting, the last inbound. Okay, so while that's great, what you need to do is bake that into other processes. For example, Marketo will not MQL a lead if sales was just recently in contact with them. Right. I've got my SDR team who weed out everybody, who is recently engaged with the sales team from their campaign. So really, it creates a very good swim lanes, and people aren't stepping on their toes. There's a lot less arguing between marketing and sales with that tool. Another one is Close Plan. So Close Plan is all about, org chart mapping, strategic selling, deal qualification scorecards, and account mapping, that kind of stuff, right? What I like about them is it's plug and play, it's easy. A lot of other companies out there, what they've done is overbuilt it. They're overly complicated. This is quite easy to use. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. And it really just gets the basics done correctly, right? But it's not overly burdened to the sales team. So those are probably my two favorite tech stacks right now.
And you like the first one because it means that sales, they can focus their time on selling, and the second because it's not going to cost an arm and a leg, but it gets the job done.
Yes, yeah, it's not overly complicating it, right?
Okay, brilliant. Kelsey, so if you had to align your teams or focus on any metrics that matter to your sales team, or even got like your aim is to get your teams to drive better processes and drive better relationships, is there anything that you would have done differently if you could start the process or start anything again?
Yeah, I would have probably learned to talk less and listen more. I know and it's hard for me as an American, probably. I feel like over the last 5 years, I've become more of like a journalist in my role. I've got a lot of departments I work with. I ask a lot of questions. I know that I don't know everything. And I really like to dig in and ask, other teams what's working, what's not working, get their view on things because they have ideas that I would have never thought of, right? So I definitely take a more collaborative approach. I make sure that I, try to walk in their shoes a bit to understand what their pain points are, and, even on new strategies or new plans or proposals, I, put a slide together before, I go into the strategy and I list all the people that I talk to help build that plan and strategy. And the goal is to fill that slide up with as many names as possible.
That is really cool. So you just want to make sure that everyone knows what your plan is and you want to think about how it could potentially affect them.
Yeah, but not only that is understanding more about, where, not only affecting them, but what are their ways of solving the problem, right? And if you make more people part of the solution, they are more likely to, support that new plan or, that new strategy.
So is there any way you're able to make this process like repeatable and tangible? Maybe weekly or monthly meetings where you're able to get like specific departments in. Is there anything that you do that you could repeat and do it again?
Yeah. I always say sharing is caring. It's like the old Care Bear, from America. I do have weekly meetings, monthly meetings, even, with departments that, I just liaison with, right? So there's no reporting line there at all. And I just like to showcase what I'm working on and get their feedback on it. Right. This is new. Even it has nothing to do with their jobs. Right. It's always good information and, oh, well, maybe I can use that for this. Right. So I do like to share as much information, even if I don't think it's relevant to them. Sometimes it does become very relevant to them.
Okay. And why do you think that is? Like if they're not actually dealing with it, why do you think it's so effective to get their input?
Again, because they might have a different take on it. Everyone has different, experiences. They might have a different viewpoint on it that I hadn't thought of, right? Plus, it goes a lot smoother when you get as much input on it. When you do finally, put that plan forward, you get a lot more people agreeing, and they think, okay, she's thought of everything, right?
That makes sense. So you kind of get that buy-in, but then also you're able to get loads of ideas to help you as well.
Yeah, because it's not just my plan; it's everybody's plan, right?
That makes sense.
Sometimes the plans are quite technical, right? I'm not a technical person, right? So I need a lot of help on understanding the technology and where the problems lie, right?
What it sounds like to me, Kelsey, is you're basically the glue between different departments.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love my job. So I like talking to a lot of different people. I like to see all the different angles within a company. I like to see how, all the initiatives make an impact, right? So it is quite a good job. A lot of people want to be externally facing. I love being internally facing. I like to see all the different inner workings of the organization and how as a team, we're trying to drive, overall the same objectives.
Yeah, that's cool. And one last question for you, Kelsey.
Yep.
So if you were in a room full of sales ops leaders, what's that one burning question that you would want an answer to?
Oh, well, it's the one that nobody can perfect is forecasting and automating forecasting, right? I
Right.
feel like sometimes you have to take the sales rep's personality into consideration. So like, are they a happy ears or are they a sandbagger? And bake that into the forecast, right? I think there's a lot more to forecasting than just, just what the data is telling you. And yes, if you have a lot of business, it is a lot easier to forecast. But when you have, we only do about, 15 deals a year, right? Big deals, right? It becomes a lot more difficult.